Have you ever caught yourself wondering, why can't I stop thinking about him? And is he thinking about me too? This question is incredibly common, and it often has less to do with the person and more to do with how our minds process emotional experiences. When a connection feels meaningful or unresolved, the brain keeps replaying it, searching for answers. Psychologists call this the unfinished story effect. Our minds naturally return to situations where we lack clarity or closure. But here's an important truth. Thinking about someone constantly doesn't always mean the connection was deep. Sometimes it simply means your mind is trying to make sense of mixed signals, hopes, or expectations that were never fully addressed. And while it's natural to wonder if he's thinking about you too, the healthier question is different. What is this situation teaching me about what I truly want and deserve? When you shift your focus back to your own growth and standards, clarity and emotional freedom begins to appear. Have you ever noticed how one person can occupy your thoughts far more than anyone else? You might be going about your day, focusing on work, talking with friends, or trying to relax, and suddenly your mind drifts back to him. You replay conversations, remember small moments, and sometimes even imagine what you would say if you saw him again. Many people assume this happens because the connection must have been incredibly special. But very often, the real reason lies in how the human mind processes emotional experiences. Our brains are wired to hold on to emotionally charged memories. When someone makes us feel excitement, curiosity, attraction, or even confusion, the brain treats that experience as important information. It begins to revisit those memories, almost like it is trying to analyze them. This is not weakness, and it is not something unique to you. It is a normal psychological response to meaningful emotional stimulation. One reason this happens is because emotions activate powerful memory systems in the brain. When you feel something strongly around a person, whether it is joy, anticipation, or uncertainty, your brain stores those moments more vividly. Later, when something reminds you of that person, even something small like a song, a place, or a phrase, your mind automatically returns to those memories. Another factor is curiosity. Human beings are naturally drawn to things that feel mysterious or unfinished. If your experience with someone left you with unanswered questions, maybe you were unsure how he felt, or things ended without clear explanation, your mind keeps circling back, trying to fill in the missing pieces. It is similar to how people feel when they watch a movie that ends without a clear conclusion. The brain keeps replaying it, searching for meaning. This is also connected to something psychologists call mental investment. When you spend time thinking about someone, imagining possibilities, or building emotional expectations, your mind begins to treat that person as significant. The more mental space they occupy, the more familiar they become to your thoughts. Familiarity itself can make those thoughts return again and again. Constantly thinking about someone does not always mean that they were the perfect match for you or that the relationship had extraordinary depth. Sometimes it simply means your mind experienced a combination of emotion, curiosity, and uncertainty that made the situation feel important. The brain is trying to process it, understand it, and organize the experience into a story that makes sense. Understanding this can be surprisingly freeing. When you realize that your thoughts are often driven by natural psychological patterns rather than destiny or fate, the experience becomes less overwhelming. Instead of feeling like you are stuck in those thoughts, you can begin to observe them with a little more distance. And when you create new experiences, meet new people, and invest your attention in things that inspire and challenge you, your mind gradually begins to shift. Thoughts about that person may still appear from time to time, but they stop controlling your emotional focus. In the end, the mind moves toward what feels meaningful, engaging, and alive in the present moment. When we think about emotional attachment versus real connection, it's easy to get confused because the two often feel very similar on the surface. Emotional attachment is a pattern that develops when someone occupies our thoughts, makes us feel a certain way, or becomes part of a mental habit. A real connection, on the other hand, is built on mutual understanding, respect, and consistency. Recognizing the difference between the two is crucial for understanding why we can sometimes feel so drawn to someone who may not be right for us. Emotional attachment often develops quickly. especially when a person provides intense feelings, excitement, mystery, attention, or even small gestures that spark hope. The brain starts associating that person with emotional highs and lows, almost like a roller coaster that keeps us coming back for more. This is why someone might stay on your mind even when the relationship hasn't fully developed or is one-sided. Your feelings are being fed by the pattern of attachment rather than by a real balanced connection. A real connection, however, is much steadier. It grows through consistent interaction, shared values, open communication, and mutual care. It doesn't rely on guessing games, uncertainty, or emotional highs and lows to feel meaningful. When you are genuinely connected to someone, there is an understanding that is present even in silence. There is trust in their intentions, and you feel safe expressing your true self without fear of judgment. This is fundamentally different from the anxious excitement of attachment, which often leaves you wondering where you stand or whether the other person is thinking about you. One of the reasons people confuse attachment with connection is that the brain releases powerful chemicals when someone new enters our lives: dopamine, oxytocin, and adrenaline. These chemicals create a sense of reward and pleasure, making us crave more interaction and replaying thoughts of that person in our minds. Attachment is reinforced every time we seek approval, hope for attention, or imagine potential scenarios with them. This neurological reinforcement can trick us into believing the connection is deeper than it actually is. The difference becomes clear when you step back and ask yourself, does this relationship feel reciprocal? Are you being seen and valued for who you truly are? Or do you find yourself mostly thinking about the other person, trying to interpret their intentions, and feeling anxious or restless? Emotional attachment thrives on ambiguity, uncertainty, and projection, whereas a real connection is grounded in clarity and mutual investment. Recognizing this difference allows you to take control of your thoughts and feelings. You can begin to distinguish between patterns your mind is creating and reality. You start asking healthier questions. Am I drawn to the idea of this person? Or do we genuinely understand and support each other? Am I holding on to uncertainty because it feels exciting or because there is a true emotional bond? Shifting your focus from attachment to authentic connection also changes how you interact with people. You become less reactive, less anxious, and more present. You stop chasing validation and start looking for genuine compatibility. You allow yourself to invest in relationships that are balanced and fulfilling rather than ones that merely stimulate your mind. Understanding emotional attachment versus real connection is about clarity. It's about recognizing that intense thoughts and feelings don't always equal deep relationships. By identifying which patterns are feeding your mind and which are truly nurturing your heart, you gain the power to direct your energy toward connections that are meaningful, lasting, and fulfilling. This awareness is liberating. It allows you to think clearly, feel more grounded, and choose relationships that genuinely enrich your life. One of the reasons someone can occupy your thoughts so persistently is what psychologists refer to as the unfinished story effect. This happens when interactions or relationships feel incomplete, unresolved, or ambiguous. The human mind has a natural tendency to seek closure, to create a sense of completion, and when it doesn't get that, it keeps returning to the situation, trying to fill in the missing pieces. This effect is not about the person themselves as much as it is about the brain's need to resolve uncertainty and understand what happened. When a relationship or connection ends without clear answers, your mind starts to replay scenarios endlessly. You imagine conversations that never happened, analyze their words, and even reconstruct their intentions. This replaying is an attempt to make sense of something that feels significant but remains undefined. The more ambiguous the situation, the more the mind holds onto it. Because the brain is programmed to focus on unresolved problems, it's a survival mechanism that originally helped humans manage threats and uncertainty in their environment. The unfinished story effect is amplified when emotions were high or inconsistent. If someone showed you attention, flirted, or created moments of excitement but then pulled away, your mind interprets these mixed signals as a puzzle it must solve. You aren't just thinking about the person, you're trying to decode a narrative that your brain believes is incomplete. This is why people often feel stuck, constantly wondering what the other person is thinking or if they feel the same way. Your thoughts aren't random, They are a reflection of your mind seeking resolution. Another reason this effect is so powerful is that it triggers what psychologists call ruminative thinking. Rumination occurs when the mind continuously revisits the same situation without reaching a satisfying conclusion. While some reflection is helpful, rumination keeps you emotionally tethered to someone, even when the relationship or situation may not be healthy or beneficial. It can create a loop where your feelings are heightened, your curiosity grows, and your attention becomes almost compulsive. It's important to recognize that the unfinished story effect does not mean you are weak, obsessive, or emotionally dependent. It simply reflects a natural cognitive pattern. Our brains are wired to focus on unresolved matters because unresolved stories demand our attention and energy. The challenge is learning how to redirect that energy toward resolution in a healthy way rather than allowing it to keep you stuck. One approach to addressing this effect is to focus on creating clarity for yourself. This might involve asking honest questions about your expectations, evaluating whether the connection was mutual and healthy, or simply accepting that some situations will remain unresolved. By acknowledging the uncertainty and giving yourself permission to move forward despite it, you gradually reduce the emotional grip of the unfinished story. Another key is redirecting your energy toward the present. When your mind constantly replays the past or imagines what could have been, you are investing your emotional energy in hypotheticals instead of reality. By engaging in meaningful activities, building personal goals, and nurturing relationships that are reciprocal, you gradually shift your focus away from the unresolved situation. Understanding the unfinished story effect can be incredibly liberating. It allows you to recognize that lingering thoughts are not necessarily a reflection of how important the other person is, but rather a reflection of how your mind processes uncertainty and emotional stimulation. Once you understand this, you gain the ability to interrupt the pattern, regain control of your attention, and redirect your energy toward relationships and experiences that are complete, fulfilling, and healthy. The unfinished story effect explains why certain people can dominate your thoughts even when logic tells you they shouldn't. By recognizing the pattern, accepting the ambiguity, and consciously shifting focus, you free yourself from mental loops and create space for clarity, emotional growth, and meaningful connection. One of the most common questions people ask themselves when they can't stop thinking about someone is he thinking about me too? This question comes from a deep human desire for validation and connection, and it's natural to want reassurance that our feelings are reciprocated. When we care about someone, our minds naturally seek evidence that the other person is thinking of us, noticing us, or feeling the same emotional pull. This curiosity is not a flaw. It's a reflection of how human beings are wired to crave emotional reciprocity. The need to know if someone is thinking about us often stems from a combination of insecurity and hope. When a connection is meaningful or even just stimulating, the mind wants confirmation that the feelings are mutual. We search for signs in texts, social media activity, tone of voice, or behavior, often interpreting small gestures as evidence. But the problem is that our interpretations are highly influenced by our emotions. A small pause in a message can feel like rejection, while a smile or a compliment can feel like proof of deep interest, even if it's just casual interaction. This need for validation is reinforced by a psychological principle known as intermittent reinforcement. When someone gives inconsistent signals, sometimes showing attention, sometimes being distant, our brains latch onto the uncertainty. We become preoccupied with figuring out their thoughts and feelings because the unpredictability creates a kind of mental hook. It's similar to why people get addicted to games of chance or scrolling social media. The mind is drawn to unpredictability, hoping for positive confirmation. This is why wondering if someone is thinking about you can feel almost compulsive, even when logic tells you it's unproductive. It's also important to understand that constantly wondering about someone else's thoughts can distract you from your own needs and priorities. While curiosity is natural, over-focusing on whether someone is thinking about you often leaves you anxious and dependent on external validation. The real question you want to explore is not what they are thinking, but how their behavior and actions align with respect, attention, and care toward you. Focusing on their inner thoughts alone can lead you to project assumptions, overanalyze signals, and inflate small gestures into signs of deep attachment that may not exist. Developing awareness of this pattern allows you to regain emotional control. Instead of obsessively trying to guess what someone else is thinking, you can ask yourself, how do I feel about this person? Are my needs being met? Am I being treated with consistency and respect? Shifting the focus from their thoughts to your own emotional experience puts you back in the driver's seat. It's empowering because it moves your energy toward clarity, self-respect, and conscious decision-making rather than uncertainty and mental looping. Another key aspect is learning to tolerate ambiguity without needing constant answers. People will not always express exactly what they are thinking, and trying to control or predict someone else's mind is both impossible and emotionally exhausting. Accepting that their thoughts are outside your control allows you to focus on what you can influence, your own behavior, boundaries, and emotional well-being. This mindset reduces anxiety and encourages healthier interactions. Wondering if someone is thinking about you is a natural human impulse, but it should not dominate your emotional world. By recognizing the urge as a reflection of desire for validation, understanding the influence of inconsistent signals, and consciously shifting attention back to yourself, you reclaim clarity, confidence, and emotional freedom. You begin to measure a connection not by what might be happening in their mind, but by what is happening in your life, and by how you are valued and respected in reality. This shift is transformative. It stops you from being trapped in mental speculation and allows you to approach relationships with a grounded, confident, and empowered mindset. Once your focus moves from uncertainty to awareness and self-respect, your interactions become healthier, your emotional energy is preserved, and you are free to cultivate connections that are genuinely reciprocal and fulfilling. Shifting focus back to yourself is one of the most powerful steps you can take when you find yourself constantly thinking about someone else. It's easy to get caught in a loop of analyzing their behavior, wondering about their thoughts, and imagining scenarios that may never happen. This mental preoccupation can leave you feeling drained, anxious, and out of control. The truth is that your attention and energy are some of your most valuable resources, and investing them in someone who may or may not reciprocate leaves little room for your own growth, confidence, and fulfillment. The first step in shifting focus is to recognize that your mind is naturally drawn to uncertainty and emotional stimulation. Thinking about someone repeatedly often provides a rush of emotions, hope, excitement, curiosity, but it also creates mental fatigue. By acknowledging this pattern, you can take conscious steps to redirect your attention toward things that actually nourish you, your goals, your hobbies, your friendships, and your own emotional development. Self-reflection is an essential part of this process. Ask yourself, what am I truly seeking in this situation? Is it connection, validation, excitement, or something deeper? By clarifying your own desires, you create a framework for understanding why you've been so preoccupied. Often, it's less about the other person and more about what their presence or the idea of their presence represents to you. Attention, affirmation, or a sense of significance. When you identify what you are really looking for, you gain clarity and the ability to pursue those needs in healthier, more constructive ways. Another important aspect is building self-reliance and emotional independence. When your emotional state depends heavily on someone else's attention or actions, you give away control of your happiness. By focusing on yourself, you reclaim that control. This might mean prioritizing personal goals, investing in friendships, engaging in creative projects, or exploring new experiences. Each step reinforces the message that your sense of value and fulfillment comes from within, not from someone else's validation or imagined thoughts. Mindfulness techniques can also be highly effective in this process. Practices such as journaling, meditation, or simply observing your thoughts without judgment allow you to notice when your mind drifts toward the other person. Instead of reacting automatically, you learn to gently redirect your focus. Over time, this strengthens your ability to choose where your attention goes, making it easier to engage with your own life instead of being stuck in mental loops about someone else. It's also valuable to engage in activities that remind you of your own worth and capabilities. Physical exercise, creative projects, learning new skills, or helping others can all create a sense of accomplishment and purpose. These experiences provide immediate feedback that you are capable, interesting, and complete on your own, reducing the mental pull of someone else's presence in your thoughts. Social support plays a crucial role as well. Surrounding yourself with friends and family who value and respect you reinforces the idea that your emotional world is not dependent on a single person. Meaningful interactions and shared experiences remind you of your agency and the richness of your life beyond the relationship or connection that has captured your mind. Shifting focus back to yourself is about reclaiming your energy, clarity, and emotional freedom. It is a deliberate choice to invest in your own growth, to prioritize your needs, and to create a life that feels meaningful regardless of another person's attention or actions. As you practice this shift consistently, the mental loops and obsessive thoughts begin to lose their grip. You start to see the situation with greater clarity, make decisions from a place of empowerment rather than anxiety, and attract connections that are reciprocal and fulfilling. This process not only helps you move forward from preoccupation with someone else, but it also strengthens your confidence, emotional resilience, and sense of self. By focusing on yourself, you create the foundation for healthier relationships, deeper personal satisfaction, and the freedom to engage with life fully, without being controlled by uncertainty or the imagined thoughts of another. In the end, constantly thinking about someone and wondering if they feel the same way is a natural part of being human, but it doesn't define your worth or the value of the connection. Most of the time, our minds are drawn to uncertainty, emotional stimulation, and unfinished stories, rather than to reality itself. By understanding why these thoughts occur, distinguishing emotional attachment from genuine connection, and recognizing the brain's tendency to replay unresolved situations, you gain clarity and perspective. The real shift happens when you redirect your focus back to yourself, your growth, your goals, your boundaries, and your emotional well-being. Instead of seeking validation or answers from someone else, you cultivate confidence, self-respect, and clarity. When you do this, the grip of uncertainty loosens, and you are free to engage in relationships that are reciprocal, healthy, and fulfilling. The power lies within you. By understanding your mind and prioritizing yourself, you create space for meaningful connection and emotional freedom.